And so now that we kind of know the difference between a weed and an invasive, it's very clear that some invasives were brought by humans. I mean, cattail itself is a problem, not just because it spreads, but there is some human involvement. By disrupting an environment, you allow invasives to be able to come in. And so a really good example of humans spreading invasives is a plant that you may be very aware of, especially if you're a Mainer, and that is the lupin. So today I went ahead and I got an interview with my with a good. And so looking at that, you can see that cattail is a weed. It's got invasive-like qualities, but it's not invasive. This may be It may be common to confuse invasives and weeds, but in this case, one of the invasives that is definitely an invasive and is sort of naturalized in a lot of America is the lupin. So you look at cattail and you can see that it's a weed. It's not an invasive species. It is a weed that will reproduce and become a problem and will limit biodiversity in an area, but isn't necessarily invasive species by the term. And so something like that spreads on its own, can cause a disruption, but it's not something like the lupin, which is what we're going to be talking about next. Now lupin, to give you some backstory, was brought to America was brought to America from Asia and Africa. And so lupin is an invasive species that was brought here from Asia or Africa, and it is a very beautiful purple flower, very iconic. And this plant was brought here because of its beautiful flower, and was brought here because of its beautiful flower. And when that flower was planted, and so lupin was brought to America from these countries, Asia, Africa, and other countries, because of its beautiful purple flower. It has a very iconic look to it. You'll see it on postcards and all kinds of other things. It is a symbol of Maine for a lot of people. And so it was brought here to America and just quickly became something that people liked. If you read the book, and so lupin was actually intertwined into our culture quite early on because of this beautiful flower. People knew that it would be something that people wanted to see on postcards and things like that. As a matter of fact, there's a book called Miss Rumphius. As a matter of fact, this is exemplified in the book Miss Rumphius, where the lupin was almost And so this beauty and this desire to have lupin in America was really exemplified by the children's book Mrs. Rumphius. Miss Rumphius was a book about lupin, and the whole story is based on Miss Rumphius wanting to bring some beauty to the world, so she plants a lot of lupin. This is actually a real story that really happened. So people started to plant a lot of lupin all around. And so this fictional story really inspired people to plant lupin because it was part of the book, and so it started getting really spread. And because of that, the plant became a problem very quickly and started to take over the environment. Because lupin isn't just a plant, it's also a flower plant. Flower plant, plant flower. Flower plant, flower plant, flower plant. Plant, weapon it up, flame, flower. Okay, I think we're going to finish this tomorrow. Gonna have to. How about that? How about that, you little fucker?